Oh, okay. We're live. Nice.
Sweet.
Um, what's going on, guys? I am here with OGMizen, and did I pronounce that correctly?
OGMizen, but it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Mizen.
Everyone does
Okay.
it.
Fucking Brits, or where are you from, actually? Brit,
No, I'm
Britain.
from UK.
Okay,
Yeah,
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 fucking British people. Let me turn off the stream in the background. And yeah, we're here to discuss veganism because OG decided to call me out on my uh, carnivorism and shame me for it, unfortunately.
yeah.
So we're going to see if we can come to some conclusions on that. You guys have probably seen a lot of other debates recently with like Romy Millennial and Vegan Gains and Andy Worsey, I think, in Vegan Gains, and some other vegan people that I don't know their names, but they said some stuff. So I figured, hey, he called me out, so let me get on it, in on it. And the reason that I was really interested in doing this one is because you called me out before in another video, which was actually a really good one that made me do some self-reflecting on what was it, spanking? I think it was spanking.
Yeah.
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 So obviously you guys can tell we're dealing with the super hippie faggot over here. So we're
That's me, mate. On that point, did I change your mind on that?
you did change my mind pretty much. Yeah.
Nice.
I'm
Good.
more so into the realm of peaceful parenting. I still think children are property,
Nice.
but I also think they shouldn't be hit.
Right, decent. That's good enough, mate. That's good enough.
Yeah. And as a caveat to make this thing more interesting, I have went ahead, since it was already prepared, call me disappointed, what you want. I went ahead and bought some Wendy's. I'm fucking starving, so I have a chicken BLT and some nuggets in here.
I figured it would happen.
But if you can convince me, I will promise that I will throw this away and take my shot at a 1 week long vegan diet.
Oh, nice. Cool. That's integrity, mate. I appreciate that.
Yeah, let's go for it. So we're just going to run through some arguments pretty quickly. I'm going to let OG start with the opening so we can just see where we are, and then we'll go from there.
Right, cool. So first off, I just want to give a shout out to Banana Warrior Princess for pushing this as hard as she possibly can. I appreciate that. So go check out Banana Warrior Princess's channel. So, right, I'm going to whip off a few arguments here and see what we can do. So first off, hashtag name the trait. So shouts out to Ask Yourself for this. You've got to name the trait, right, which if present in animals, which if present in a human would justify you being able to kill them for, your own for your profit of whatever description, whether you eat them, whether you use them as, whatever, a paperweight, I don't care. You have to name the trait that is present in animals, which if present in humans would justify their murder or killing, whatever word you want to use. And secondly, I want to take away the kind of last refuge of meat eaters in this debate, which is to say, well, I only care about human suffering, right? So people say, I don't really care about animal suffering. You're never going to convince me to care about animal suffering. I only care about human suffering. Well, I've got some interesting statistics here for you. So Mercy for Animals reports, last February, BuzzFeed News revealed that on average, one Tyson employee a month, that's a food company, one Tyson employee a month is injured by equipment and loses a finger or limb. Just a few months later, a report from Oxfam found that line workers in Tyson Foods, Purdue Farms, Pilgrim's Pride, and Sanderson Farms were denied breaks. In fact, they went so long without breaks that some employees were forced to wear diapers. So there's quite a lot of humiliation going on there. These workers are subjected to hazards like injuries, respiratory illness, and infection by antibiotic-resistant bacteria. In fact, occupational environmental medicine found that 10 out of 22 workers who were tested carried potentially deadly bacteria. And in 2008, researchers called for legal redress for slaughterhouse workers because of the psychological trauma caused by their daily experience of large-scale violence and death within an institutional culture that does little to reduce animal or human suffering. Several researchers have shown that The establishment and or presence of a large meat processing plant in a number of rural American towns has been connected to increases in homelessness, crime, familial violence, and child abuse within the community. A 2009 study by criminologist Amy Fitzgerald shows that slaughterhouse employment increases total arrest rates, arrests for violent crimes, arrests for rape, and arrests for other sex offences in comparison with other industries.
Can you repeat that last part for me?
Yeah, a 2009 study by criminologist Amy Fitzgerald shows that slaughterhouse employment increases total arrest rates, arrests for violent crimes, arrests for rape, and arrests for other sexual offences in comparison with other industries. So they did control for other industries in this. The study found that when the number of slaughterhouses workers increased, the arrest rate increased. This was the case even when controlling for variables like income, gender, and employment in similar factory operations. A 2013 study by Flinders University's Dr. Nick Taylor examined attitudes towards animals and the propensity for aggression within a sample of farmers and meat workers in Queensland, Australia. It was established that meat workers scored significantly higher than the general community on measures of physical aggression, anger, and hostility. She also found that meat workers' aggression levels were so high that they're similar to the scores for incarcerated populations. So they're as violent as prison populations. And just to finish off, I've got an interesting quote. I wonder if you can tell me who this quote is from, and just think about it in the context of this conversation. So, quote, "The future of your civilization is dependent on the fundamental ideas and morals that you preserve. The survival of a nation rests on the will of its citizens, not only in what you preach, but in what you practice. If you want to be healthy or want others to be healthy, you're going to have to do more than just say, eat whatever you want, just don't violate the NAP, bro. It takes work, it takes discipline. Think of society as if it was your daughter." There's an ellipsis there, I've cut out a bit. "Think of society as if it was your daughter. You have the capacity and burden to raise this child, to instill in them the necessary virtues to carry on your legacy, to make the world into something your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren will love. Are you telling me the only virtue you would instill in your daughter is freedom? What kind of parent would you be if the only intellectual investment that you've made into the continuation of human consciousness was freedom, i.e., you know, I just want to eat meat, don't bother me with the ethics. If you want to smoke meth, smoke meth. If you want to drink bacon grease, drink bacon grease. If you want to adopt and promote a self-destructive philosophy that has contributed to the suffering of hundreds of millions throughout history, hey, you know, just free speech, man, just be free, you know? Can you tell me who that quote is?
I think I've seen the guy. He's pretty handsome, actually. For those guys who don't know, that's a quote from my last video, The Case for Libertarian Fascism.
Yeah, which is a great video, by the way.
Interesting. Okay.
So where are you going to go with that?
All right, so let's see. Where to see? So that's something that I'd never heard before. The argument of basically slaughterhouses increasing violence among people.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is interesting. That's something that I would have to look into. I mean, obviously, I'm willing to take the information at face value.
Yeah.
However, I'm not sure that there may be an argument against the industry, but it's not an argument against the particular ethics of eating and killing animals. I'm sure there could be some correlation between the two, but I'm not sure exactly.
Well, see, I kind of see what you're getting at, but it's the fact that these workers, I understand, obviously there's an argument to say this is just how the industry works, and if you killed a chicken in your back garden, it wouldn't quite be the same. But there's two sides to that. First off, it's not just how the industry works and workers being exploited and stuff. This is purely, I mean, we live in a Western kind of capitalist society. That's how we get our meat. If we're talking, you know, just day to day, this is what you're paying for. This is what you're contributing to when you buy Wendy's, right? And secondly, it's actually the theory is that killing animals desensitizes you to violence as a whole across the board. So the people who are made to kill animals or who choose to kill animals or whatever are becoming desensitized through that killing, whether it's in a slaughterhouse or in their back garden, towards having empathy for other animals, including humans.
Well, I think the solution to that would be automation, right?
It could be a solution, yeah.
Okay.
I'll grant you that.
And you made the argument earlier to name the trait that's in animals that, if present in humans, would justify killing humans, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think it's a trait that. Well, the thing is, I think it's a trait that animals are lacking. Granted, I understand the argument that animals are sentient, that they feel pain, that they have a desire to reproduce and live and things like that. But I don't think that they have rights, because rights, I believe that rights necessitate reciprocation. Right. You agree with that?
No.
No?
No. First off, rights aren't a trait. They're a social construct. I hate to use that word, but that's what they are. And secondly, no, you can separate rights from duties or responsibilities. That's what we do with children. You know, we don't hold children to the same kind of the same degree that we do adults. We don't hold children to have duties and responsibilities like adults. That's why we have separate criminal systems for younger people and stuff like this. But yeah, we can separate rights and responsibilities for sure, because we do it with children. If you're going to say that someone's lack of capacity to have responsibilities or duties justifies you killing them, then you're basically arguing that it's okay to kill children or people who are mentally, you know, retarded. Or
I wouldn't argue that it's justified to kill children. But in the same sense, I do think children and animals share a trait in that, well, to an extent, that as far as animals go, their rights are specifically derived from that of their ownership, of their property owner. Like basically a lion in the wilderness, a lion and a gazelle in the wilderness, they don't have respective rights among each other. It's only, you know, instinctual survival. So, you know, there's no rights being violated if a lion eats a gazelle. So if that's the case, then I don't see what would be the violation if a human were to eat a lion or a gazelle.
Right. And what would stop us from granting animals those rights?
Well, the fact that they can't reciprocate them. The fact that
children can't reciprocate them.
They can. If a child murders someone,
a newborn baby cannot reciprocate in terms of rights.
Well, a baby, okay, maybe not a baby.
It's the logical conclusion of your argument here is that it's okay to kill babies because they can't.
Well, I am pro-choice, you know. Granted, not after the term, but
right,
you know, this is
right. So you're granting a fetus rights, and can a fetus carry out duties and responsibilities and reciprocate rights? Of course not.
Well, no, I believe a fetus's rights are dependent on that of the again, the owner, you know, the host, which is the mother. So I would lend the same credit to that of animals, in that they outside of an owner just dictating to another anyone else that this is my property, you shall not infringe on my property, then animals don't have a capability to, you know, uphold that moral standard on their own.
Oh, sorry, I mistook you there. Did you say you're pro-choice?
Yes, pro-choice.
Yes, sorry, I thought pro-life for a second. Then that's fair enough, right? So, what is That's interesting. So, what is it about? That's kind of I've not come at it from that angle before. Even then, you know, animals aren't inside another human being. You know, you may sort of talk of them as the property of another human being. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're the property of another human being. I would say that if you take an animal into your home or whatever, you are responsible to care for that animal. I don't know so much about the, because it being your property, it seems like a bit of a weak justification to destroy it. I mean, my daughter's my property. Do I get to destroy her?
Well, no, because your daughter has the capacity to reciprocate rights, even if not present at the moment. She has the fundamental you know, innate traits, you know, mentally to eventually reciprocate rights. Animals do not have that. Animals can't grow into being able to reciprocate rights.
So let's say my daughter, God forbid, had some kind of traumatic brain injury tomorrow, and she would never be able to reciprocate rights. Would it be okay to kill her then?
Yeah, I would say so.
Really?
I would say that. I would say that would fall under like what was it? What's the word? It's not euthanization for humans. It's I can't think of the word, but assisted suicide, I guess you could say. You know, like if your daughter became a vegetable, you know, and she's like in the hospital bed, and you have a choice, like, do I want to subsidize this her life, or do I want to pull the plug? I think you have a right to make that choice. I think at that point, she's no longer entitled to being alive because she can't live without the assistance or subsidy of another person, another individual. And also she doesn't have the capacity to, you know, decide whether or not she does, at that point, she doesn't really have a desire to live. So at that point, I would say, you know, if she like became a vegetable, then it would be less than that.
Let's assume she's not in a completely vegetated state, right? But that she's just kind of damaged enough. Let's take my daughter out of it. Let's say you have a child, right? And they have a condition where their brain is damaged, but to the point where they can still want to live, they can still have a desire to live, and they can still somewhat function in the world, but they can't conceptualize rights. They can't abstract and conceptualize rights to the extent that we can. Because that's the problem. There is a gray area in that, in which you could have a child that's not fully vegetated, who does still want to live, who does still have some kind of autonomy to some extent, but cannot understand and reciprocate rights. There are plenty of people like this. What about someone with a kind of mental disorder who can't, you know, schizophrenia, can't even see you in the room with them, but they want to live. They should have a right to live, we would say, in a civilized society, I think. But, you know, they're not quite a vegetable, and they're not quite someone else's property. There is a gray line in there, I think.
Well, yeah, you know, at that point, you know, if they're still conscious enough to the point that they recognize their own self-ownership and they have a drive to live, then yeah, I would say they should be entitled to that. And I understand the argument.
So animals have a drive to live, you know, but they're not able to reciprocate rights.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure animals have a drive to live in the same sense that humans have a drive to live. I think the drive for an animal to live is simply, you know, it's for lack of better words, wild. You know, they're looking to sustain their existence and reproduce. There's no deeper, you know, conscientious aspect. There's no deeper meaning to their existence other than exist, reproduce, exist, reproduce.
I don't know about that. What about the greater apes, bonobos, chimpanzees, and things like these? The things that are the creatures that are really close to us in intelligence. What about cetacean species who have way more complex brains than we do? They just don't have hands, and they don't create social constructs and legal systems and stuff like this. What about them?
Yeah, I understand that, and I guess it could be argued that that they have greater capacity and or greater meaning to their life than, you know, just a cow or something like that. But
or a human. Emotionally, I think the cetacean species especially have a greater capacity for emotion. And we can see this by looking at their actual brains. Looking at the structures in their brains, it does seem that they have a much greater capacity to feel pain and emotionally than we do.
Possibly, but how would you contractualize that? How would you like, not necessarily enforce a contract, but how would you come to a conclusion that you both come to? Yeah, how would you come to a conclusion that both you and the I can't pronounce the fucking word, but the cetacean. How would you come to a conclusion that you both can understand that position that you're both saying, hey, we both have an innate desire to live, we both have rights?
They don't need to. Only we need to. Only we need to understand that they have a right to live, that they have a capacity to feel and suffer, and they have a desire to live. Only we need to do that to extend rights to them and to extend protection to them. And as for the implementation of that necessarily, that's kind of irrelevant to the ethical question, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you were to extend that to carnivorous beings like a lion or a bear or some shit, would you, if a lion and a bear tried to attack you, would you say that they would be, in a sense, violating rights? Would they be, would they have the same moral responsibility as us?
No, not at all. I wouldn't. Again, I would separate rights and responsibilities here. They have no responsibility to, and this is why it pisses me off when they shoot these animals after killing people and stuff. They have no responsibility in terms of morality and stuff like that. You have a right to defend yourself, and you have a responsibility not unnecessarily kill and cause suffering to these animals. But I wouldn't say that they have a responsibility at all to not to kill you. I would say you've got a responsibility to make sure you're not killed by them, if anything, you know.
Okay, and I've heard that point too, you know, of which you don't have the responsibility to not unnecessarily kill animals. Why is it that, why do you believe that need should factor into whether or not we eat meat or consume products like leather or something like that?
What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate a bit?
Yeah, because people generally make the argument, vegan specifically, that you know, because it's not necessary. Like, we don't need meat to survive. We don't need, you know, leather clothing to stay warm. You know, things like that. Like, we don't need, you know, snakeskin boots. You know, and because there's no need for it, that makes it, you know, unethical.
Yeah, because having a need for something is a justification. If you have a need for something in order for you to survive, that's, in my mind, that's a justification to be able to take that from, you know, an animal, perhaps. Some vegans do say, you know, you have no more right to live than an animal. I'm not sure how much I would agree with that, but I would say, yeah, definitely, it's the need in itself for, say, food, if you're in a survival situation or whatever, is a justification to kill that animal, because the animal would do the same to you.
Mm-hmm. But being
in that situation,
being a capitalist, I would argue, though, I don't operate my life on the basis of need or necessity. I don't solely pursue things or engage in activities that are innate to my ability to survive. You know, I think we're able to go beyond that and, you know, do extracurriculars and, you know, just, you know, things for luxury and enjoyment.
But here's the problem: I'm a capitalist as well. So this argument of I'm a capitalist, so therefore that's not an argument. Socialist.
It sounds pretty socialist. You know,
it's not an argument.
To every man according to his need.
Yeah, I know. No, I don't believe that. I think you should have the right, of course, to satisfy your preferences beyond your needs as much as possible without, you know, without violating the rights of another. So I don't get to because, you know, no offense, but I can make some pretty nice black skin boots out of you. You know, I'm not going to, but if I could, and that would probably make my life, you know, awesome. I'd like some, but I'm not going to. So, because I would be violating your rights in doing that, wouldn't I? So that's the line for me. And the whole argument with veganism is to say that you should grant animals the same rights that you grant to humans, to say, if I don't need that, I won't take it. It's not right to take it necessarily, you know?
I get the argument. It's just the problem of applying it to animals. Okay,
what's the problem?
Well, the problem being that I Jesus, because it places animals on an equal moral axiom as humans. It's basically saying that we are both equally entitled to the same standards of morality. And
I would say that is because, right, you're granted rights because you have a capacity to suffer, right? Forgetting responsibilities, you're granted rights because you have a capacity to suffer. And again, you have to name the trait here. If you want to say that we're not on the same level as animals in terms of our rights, you have to name the difference. You have to name the relevant difference between us and animal.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that we're granted rights because of our ability to suffer. I think we're granted rights because of our ability to defend them. I think that's the primary factor that
so
stems
might
from
is
rights.
right.
I mean, in a way, no, I wouldn't say might is right. I would say,
No.
yeah, I would say that of course.
You're not going to win that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe my fascist side could make the argument, but yeah, as far as libertarianism goes, nah. So
no, okay, let's say, right, because people say these are the kind of three things, is that or I guess two things, I don't know, three things, right? Intelligence, sentience, and the capacity to suffer, right? And the reason that I say the capacity to suffer is what grants us rights is because if you had a sentient, intelligent, artificial intelligence, right? And I said to you, you can either kill this human being who is both intelligent, sentient, and can suffer, or you can turn off this artificial intelligence, which is way more intelligent and perhaps way more sentient than the human being, but has no capacity to suffer. It would be a no-brainer. You either kill the human being who can suffer, or you turn off the artificial intelligence. It is the capacity to suffer that makes the difference in my mind. This is why people use the oysters argument, you know?
So would you say even if you have the ability to kill an animal without it suffering, that it will still be unjust?
I would, because it's I don't think you have that capacity necessarily. And at the same time, again, to fall back on the argument I made earlier, it not only involves animal suffering, but it involves human suffering. And it kind of deranges the human being that's doing it. It does involve human suffering to do that. And it does elevate it, and it does pose a threat to society for humans to be going around killing animals.
Okay. I can understand that. But in regards to the human element, this is just a note that I took down. I only have 3 points, so we should be pretty easy to get through them. But I've made the argument that I value the prosperity of humans more than I value the lives of animals. If humans can attain increased amounts of prosperity by killing animals, I feel like I have a moral obligation to, respect the continuation of my species at the expense of another.
Right.
Would you say that is okay?
I would say that that's more of an assertion than an argument, isn't it? That human prosperity is more important than animal suffering, or the lives of an animal or whatever. That's more of an assertion than an argument. You have to explain why that would be the case. Why is human prosperity? Because that's essentially beyond the needs of survival. That's going way beyond that and going to things like self-actualization and preferences and all this sort of stuff. You are condemning an animal to death or to suffering or whatever for the sake of your own personal gratification. I don't think that's a strong enough justification. And if you want to make that argument, you have to explain exactly why that is a strong enough justification.
I think it's a strong enough justification because it's a, well, I mean, it falls into the category of, I guess, sort of a, I guess kind of like a moral supremacy in a way, above animals. And in the sense
you have
that,
to explain why you have that.
Why I have the moral supremacy?
Yeah, where that comes from.
It comes from, I guess my own self-interest as a human, that, it's what do you mean it's not an argument? I think that's an argument. It's sort of
again, I might like some black skin boots.
Well, yeah, but we are of the same species. That's the thing.
Right, species isn't an argument either.
Now, granted, if you were a like I guess if you can make the argument of someone being a ethnic supremacist, I guess they could make the same argument of I feel like I'm above this inferior race in my species, so I gotta have the right to kill them. Right. But I feel like if we limit ourselves to this strict box of we can only pursue what we can pursue for the sake of survival, then it's kind of like, I don't want to say a slippery slope, but it's kind of like a corruption of the general human experience in a way.
We can only pursue what we need up to the point of survival, as long as when it comes to violating the rights of others. As long as you're not violating the rights of an animal or another human being or anything like this, you can pursue your own self-interest. You can pursue your own kind of furthering in the world. But to violate the rights of another is fundamentally unjustifiable.
Okay, so would you consider? I know you understand. I know you believe that inherently killing an animal is violating their rights as a sentient being. Would you say like destroying or exploiting their habitat is the same thing as violating their rights?
I think it depends. I think if you can, I think obviously we should do our best to minimize it. I think it honestly depends on what you're destroying their environment for. I think if you're bulldozing the Amazon rainforest, which we're actually doing, we're bulldozing the Amazon rainforest to grow grain to feed to cows so we can have cheeseburgers. No, I don't think that's justifiable. However, if you're say gonna basically take a grass field and destroy, I mean that's a habitat to thousands of tiny insects or whatever, and you're gonna concrete over a grass field to build a hospital or to build an orphanage or something, or even just some awesome cinema or whatever, it is definitely a gray area. But no, I would say there is a kind of line there. You hit on a good point, that is a kind of gray area. But no, I would say definitely you'd have to have a really good justification to do that.
And even if it lends to the point of exploiting that habitat necessitates the death of some animals. We'd obviously know this for like things like agriculture, that if you want to set up a plot of land to farm, that you're going to have to do some pest control. You're going to have to relocate, if not just outright kill like varmints and things like that. And
that's for human survival.
Well, I guess
that's to meet our survival needs.
It could be the same as if you want to make a if you want to create, like you said, like a cinema or a hospital or amusement park or something like that, you have to tear down some forests, kill some squirrels probably, and should that be justifiable?
It's a hard one, yeah, for sure. It's a gray zone. For sure, it's a gray zone, and this is where the definition of veganism comes in. Veganism is to avoid the suffering, exploitation, and enslavement and killing of animals. As far as is practicable and practicable and necessary, and it's basically doable. I forget the definition. We could pull one up if you want. But as far as is practicable, so yeah, there is a grey line there for sure. But it still doesn't justify slaughtering 52 billion animals a year for cheeseburgers and Wendy's. This is the thing. I'll grant you, there's a grey line there. Right, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about you eating cheeseburgers, skinning cows, taking their skin, you know, all of this sort of stuff. That's the fundamental thing that vegans focus on. The things that you can change very easily with very little effort. All you have to do is, rather than go like this and pick up this kind of milk, you go like this and pick up this plant milk instead. You know, it's that simple. And that's the kind of changes that we're asking people to make, because it makes a huge amount of difference. Vegans save 200 animals a year just purely by changing what they eat every day, you know? And that's not to talk about the environmental consequences, the amount of pollution, the amount of water we save, the amount of land we save, all of that sort of stuff. That's all wrapped in there.
Okay. Then I guess this still goes to the point of, you know, that animals aren't property, which I have a hard time getting past, because I own 2 dogs, and I consider them my property. You know, if I were to, you know, die or go away, they would not, like, there would be no, I wouldn't say there would be any moral obligation for anyone else to respect their life and to not kill them, absent my, you know, ownership over them. I think that their rights specifically derive from my rights, and if I abandon them, if I, you know, like, let them go in the wilderness and stuff, at that point they no longer have rights, you know.
Right.
And I would also argue, you know, that if in the case of, you know, if I, like, because I purchased these animals, you know, for my own self-interest, you know, I didn't purchase them because I wanted to keep them alive and, you know, fulfill their desire to live. I purchased them, you know, for companionship. But if for whatever reason they could not service that function, if they weren't good companions and they were just, you know, vicious and angry and, you know, just trying to fight me all the time, I feel like I would. Dog. I feel like I would have a right as a property owner over these animals to take them to the, you know, animal shelter and euthanize them. Yeah.
Right. Well, my dog's bitten me about 100 times and I haven't put him down, but that's irrelevant. Okay. So would you be willing to be owned as property by a superior species? Let's say aliens came down from space and had vastly superior technology, vastly superior kind of firepower and all this sort of stuff, had the capacity to subjugate the human race. Would you be perfectly happy to essentially render yourself their property? Would that render your rights irrelevant?
No, I wouldn't be happy with that. But then again, I could express it in a way where they would understand it.
How do you justify you treating an animal like that then? If you wouldn't like to be treated like that, it's a basic matter of empathy and a matter of kind of reciprocity, I guess. Is if you wouldn't like to be treated like that, and if I could sort of transport your consciousness into a cow, you wouldn't want the cow to be slaughtered. You'd want more people like me knocking about.
Well, but then I wouldn't be a cow. Well, I'll still be a cow, but I'll be like a highly intelligent cow, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. But you haven't got hooves, you haven't got a human voice box, all this sort of stuff. So you wouldn't be able to tell us that. You would have a cow's voice box. You would have a cow's kind of brain. If your consciousness was limited down to the consciousness of a cow, you still had this kind of basic awareness. You would not want to be treated like that. You would not want to be. I mean, there's some places they skin cows fully conscious, cut their legs off. At the kind of forearm, they cut their legs off and have them in the middle of the street, fully conscious, skin them alive, and that's perfectly justifiable to them because their self-interest, my property, is all these same arguments are used to do this to animals, and it's a matter of having empathy, and it's a matter of putting yourself in their position and saying, look, it's not fair, it's not right, just on a basic level of decency. Again, you can avoid it. Why not eat a plant burger instead? Why not eat anything else instead?
Yeah, they taste like shit. I've tried a lot of plant burgers. They just don't get it.
That's right. A lie. Yeah, no, I know a lot of them do. They're quite bad, but they're getting better these days. I had 2 burgers today that were actually. I
have recently switched over, which I don't know if it's going to last, but I have recently switched over to flaxseed milk compared to regular milk, which again, it still doesn't taste as good, but it gets the job done, I guess. But
yeah, some soy milk tastes like shit, but there's some really good stuff out there. You've got to try different products. It's a matter of just basically saying, look, I have the capacity to not cause suffering. So why would you cause suffering? It's just a basic matter of kind of empathy and ethics on some level.
Well, I don't think the ethics go as far as to say, you know, because like I don't believe that, you know, I think you can make the argument that you shouldn't cause unnecessary suffering to animals, but you should still have the moral right to kill them if to like eat them or consumption or, you know, product consumption or whatever. It's the same. I think it would be the same argument as, you know, someone saying, is it okay to kill a human? You know, in certain circumstances, you know, even let's say if someone believed in the death penalty, you would argue, yeah, it's okay to kill a human, but as you know, you can still have ethics within that realm to where, you know, you're not saying it's not okay to burn a human alive or to, you know, make them drink acid and burn from the inside out. But again, know, make the murder ethical.
Yeah, again, it comes back to this thing. If you have to name the relevant difference that makes it okay to put a bullet in the back of an animal's head, but not a bullet in the back of a human being's head. Because an animal has not committed some crime that is worthy of the death penalty. Animal is by definition innocent. It cannot infringe on moral kind of rights or whatever like that. It has no ethical capacities in that sense. So you have to, again, name the trait and not just say it's property, and not because that's, again, a social construct. The whole point of this debate, the whole point of this argument is to say that you should extend rights, whether you consider them your property or not. It's irrelevant. You should extend the same rights that you would to another human being, unless your survival is at stake. Unless you can name the trait, you can't justify putting a bullet in the back of an animal's head, but not a bullet in the back of a retard's head. You know?
I mean, but how far down the food chain would you extend that? Would you extend it down to, I don't know, like invertebrates, insects, and things like that?
Well, as much as I can to, you know, out of convenience. Of course, there's a grey area, and this is what you keep jumping to kind of avoid the fact that you are paying for cheeseburgers when you don't need to, and you're paying for animals to be killed when you don't need to. Yeah, there's a grey line. I might swat a mosquito that's pissing me off. Yeah, don't get me wrong. But if I can avoid it, I'll just catch that little guy in a tub and put him outside. Why?
Bullshit.
You know, no, I do. I genuinely do, man. I'm a hippie faggot. What can I say?
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a desire to, like, if I'm going to accept this argument that I should extend, you know, the same moral rights that I would extend, or the same ethics I would extend to humans, to all sentient beings, I would expect that there would be some level of absolutism to that. And
to the extent that is possible and practicable, that's all the definition of veganism is. And yeah, that's a kind of gray area, and you can stretch that and warp it if you want, but you know what I'm saying, don't you? You know, let's not play ignorant here. You know what I'm saying is that you can't justify going to a shop and buying a burger off that shelf, again, especially with the amount of human suffering that's caused in this system. And it's not just before the socialists and commies jump in. It's not the fact that it's capitalism, they exploit their workers, they do it all the time. Even the academics, even the sociologists, and we all know how pro-capitalism most of those are, even the sociologists who have studied this have said it's not due to the capitalist system. It's the fact that we're squeamish around death. People don't want to look at the suffering they cause. So the slaughterhouses are pushed to the kind of outskirts. And that is where these workers get kind of marginalized. Nobody's paying attention to what's happening there. And that's what enables them to be exploited. So it's by buying McDonald's, by buying Wendy's, by buying any of these meat products that you're going to find on the average kind of store shelf, you are exploiting kind of as a matter of course, as a matter of just how the world works. You are exploiting other human beings, and you are kind of increasing the rape rates, the arrest rates, the violence rates, the domestic violence, the child abuse rates. As far as we can tell, the best data we have, it shows this very clearly. So again, we're not just talking about animals, and I really want to bring this into these vegan debates. We're not just talking about animals here. We're talking about human lives. We're talking about children here. We're talking about men and women being raped.
Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily say that is a inherent exploitation, because they voluntarily agree to, you know, partake in that that venture, you know, of slaughtering animals. And if you know, I don't believe that, you know, because someone provides a service and that service leads them to have some sort of mental break, that you utilizing that service equates to you subsidizing or creating that mental break. I don't think that necessarily follows.
Right. Yeah, of course, you're not necessarily you're certainly not intentionally causing it, and it's not like you're paying directly for those people to be exploited. But the fact is, the products you pay for result in people being exploited. Those people becoming desensitized to violence, and that desensitization to violence spreading out into the community and affecting other human beings. It's just a fact of how these things work. There's no avoiding it. Yeah, and I've made a whole series on how this stuff plugs into the psychology and how it's seriously warped stuff going on. And you know, I really want to bring this into these debates, man.
Okay, so
there is a human. Yeah.
So you argue that at least back to the point of the animals, that you know you should extend rights and extend ethics to animals as far as it's practically possible. What would you consider practical? Like what would you define as a level of being practical?
Buying vegan products rather than buying meat products. Yeah, it's that simple, man. I don't sit here worrying myself and you know, having a bleeding heart all day long about the suffering of animals. I know vegans who don't care emotionally about animals whatsoever. They just get it logically, is that I can reduce the amount of suffering that I cause, so I will, just as a matter of this is ethical too. Again, you can't name the trait that makes animals different from humans in that sense. So to say, well, I'll just carry on doing it when you understand that it's an ethical issue in that sense, is to say that you don't care about ethics at all.
Well, I think there is a trait, and I would say, you know, like, I'm not sure if it's a scientific word, but I believe it's the morality of the situation, that I don't believe animals have the capacity to be moral agents. I don't think that they have that ability.
I agree.
So
I agree. They don't have the ability to be moral agents in the sense that we can demand moral action from them. We can't put duties, responsibilities to be moral on them, and no sane person would. But you have moral agency. You as a human being have moral agency, and if you're going to take that seriously, again, you have to name the trait that makes humans different from animals in the sense of their rights. What grants them rights? We're not talking about duties and responsibilities. Rights, you know.
Okay, I'm gonna shoot for some help in the chat. You guys help me name the trait. Help me name the trait, because
they won't be able to. There isn't one. There isn't one.
I'm getting my ass kicked at this point.
I'd love them to name the trait. Come on, bring it on, chat. Throw anything you can at me, because I'll slap them all down. Seriously.
So would you say that you know, subsidizing an industry that partakes in, you know, killing animals, like if I was to buy a salad from Wendy's instead of a cheeseburger or something, would that be good?
That's good. Yeah. Supply and demand, man. We're both capitalists. We know supply and demand. If you're buying vegan products from these places, you're telling them there's a demand for these and less demand. I mean, it's a kind of zero-sum game, isn't it? In that sense, if you're buying a salad, you're not buying a burger. They're losing out on the profit from the burger, and they're gaining the profit from the salad. That moves their sort of incentive over to, let's sell salads. I mean, who the fuck eats salads anyway?
I eat chicken salads, but you know, that's by like the vegan principle. So
yeah.
So on the human element, I still believe that, you know, if there is a demand, which there is still a demand for meat products,
yeah,
I can't bring myself to find a issue or take moral objection to a human pursuing, you know, to service that demand in order to, you know, you know, achieve their own prosperity, to attain wealth for themselves, and to, you know, create a better life or whatever for themselves, to, you know, whatever. I can't bring myself to say that, you know, eating meat is immoral, but
this is the problem. Is again, you're saying it's okay to violate the rights of another to make my life better. But what makes your life more valuable in that sense, that you can say, well, I can violate your rights to make my life better, but nobody can violate my rights? You kind of have to name the trait on that one.
Well, again, I don't know the trait, but I think it is something that's observable that humans value the lives of other humans more than that of animals. I think you pointed that earlier in the discussion, that you wouldn't consider, like, if you had to choose between saving another human or saving a cow from drowning, I'm pretty sure you would go for the human, right?
Yeah, but I'm not asking you to make that choice. I'm not asking you to make that decision, am I?
Well, no, but because of that decision, there's obviously some innate trait that you find more valuable in the human than you would find in the animal. Like they're not equal beings. They're not equally, their lives aren't equally valuable.
Not in my mind. Not in terms of how I feel, but if it's a kind of either or thing, then it's down to preference, isn't it? Then it's down to which one I prefer. It's not a kind of ethical question. If one of them has to die regardless, it's kind of, well, I just prefer that one emotionally. I just have this kind of, and again, saying that humans prefer other humans is it's a kind of appeal to nature, appeal to common practice kind of thing. It's just because that's how it is, doesn't justify it ethically. It certainly doesn't justify killing an animal when there's no human life at risk. Because again, we're not talking about an animal life versus a human life. We're talking about just the animal life in a vacuum almost.
Yeah. So
you don't have to make that.
Let's say there's a scenario, and I know I keep throwing out hypotheticals, but let's say there's a scenario in which someone has some kind of phobia to where they can't eat. They have to consume. They can only eat meat. Like they can't. Mentally they don't have the capacity to consume. Like vegan products or something like that. Yeah.
So they have a medical condition.
Would you say that they're like, would you say that if they don't have the ability to consume food outside of meat or foods that exploit animals, would you say that they would you make the I guess argument that like with the exception that if you would prefer that they eat animals so that they can survive versus not eating at all?
Yeah, of course. If it's down to survival, then yeah, for sure. If it's down to a person's survival themselves, I've got no issue with that. But it's not for so many people. It's not down to their survival. Very few people have a kind of allergy or whatever that they cannot eat just plants.
So why is the preference of wanting to eat meat invalid?
It's not an invalid preference. You can want to eat meat all you want. You just can't justify doing it ethically. Right? I have no problem with you preferring to eat chicken or preferring to eat a steak than eating a veggie burger, or there's a million different vegan foods, whatever. I have no problem with that being your preference. What I have a problem with is you violating the rights of others to meet that preference.
Okay. And what about in terms of feeding another animal? Because that's something that's interesting. Because that's something I would like to get your opinion on. I've seen recently where there's like vegan pet owners who only feed their pets vegan diets, who only feed their dogs or their cats like kale and shit like that. And the dogs and cats start fucking dying off and like they're like miserable and like bony and shit. Would you say that it's okay if you're going to take on another animal, and take them on as your pet or your property or whatever? Is it okay to then exploit the life of another animal to subsidize their survival?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think a lot of dogs can live on vegan diets perfectly healthy. Cats can't. They're obligate carnivores. They need to eat meat. And there are certain dogs who really do badly on vegan diets and stuff like that. So it's a matter of can in that sense. I mean, I feed my dog meat purely because I don't have the time, I don't have the money in a lot of cases. I don't think I can even get vegan dog food around here. And my dog was a rescue dog. I think it becomes unjustifiable when you pay someone to breed an animal and bring it into being, and then you don't even try to feed it vegan. I mean, my dog eats a lot of vegetables and stuff, so it's not like he's got a massively meat heavy diet or whatever. If you pay someone else to bring an animal into being and then you start feeding it other animals when there's alternatives, I mean, again, there are grey lines for sure. And I would say the people who feed their cats vegan and their dogs vegan and make them sick and stuff, yeah, that's retarded. But so yeah, there are a lot of questions here that I'm still up in the air on for sure, and I agree with you on that. That's certainly one of them. But we come back to this so many times. I'm not asking you to feed your dog vegan, you know. I'm asking you to throw that Wendy's in the bin.
So let's see. So maybe it's the problem with non-vegans that there's a sense of irrationality to where we can't rationalize the valuation of animals versus that of humans.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, how do you solve that? How do you get past that point?
How do I get past the point that humans are irrational?
Well, how do you convince someone who doesn't believe that, like regardless of whether or not they can justify it or not, like let's say someone who just says, you know, it's not an argument and I don't care. How do you?
Yeah, well,
like
I would deal with that person through. I would, if someone's going to be irrational, if someone's going to really dig in and say no, fuck you, and I've presented all of the ethical arguments, they accept that it is an ethical issue. Like if you accept now that it's an ethical issue and that my arguments are watertight, and still refused to give up meat and all this sort of stuff, I would ostracize you. I would not speak to you. I would want nothing to do with you, and I would encourage others to do the same, because by saying that you don't care about this particular ethical issue, you're saying you don't care about ethics, full stop, in my mind. And this is where I think Ask Yourself and Vegan Gains kind of should have closed the argument in the last debate. I mean, Warski, if him and his brother or whatever had said that to me and said, well, yeah, we get that you've got great arguments and it's not ethically justifiable and all this sort of stuff, we're going to keep doing it anyway, I'd say, well, you're a scumbag. And I would want nothing to do with you, and I would encourage others not to be involved with you, because listen, if you understand that something's an ethical issue, right, and that doesn't bother you enough for you to make some real basic, easy kind of changes in your life, I would say you don't care about ethics. And what is the other guiding principle to your behavior beyond self-interest? If the only guiding principle to your behavior is self-interest, then, you know, you're a dangerous person. You're a dangerous person. I would not want to associate with you. I wouldn't, yeah, please. I wouldn't want to be around you. And I think I would encourage others to do the same. It's like anarcho-capitalism. I can't initiate force against you for doing this, but I wouldn't want to be around you if you fully understood the arguments, you fully understood that it's unjustifiable on an ethical basis, and you continue to do it. I would say, look, morality isn't a buffet table. You don't get to pick and choose.
Well, would you say that you're not allowed to take physical action against meat eaters?
Well, I would say you're justified in using violence to stop someone from doing that to an animal. But of course, we're not in a society. I mean, if I was to do that in this society, I'd be locked away. So I just don't do it out of a consequential kind of thing. But I would say you're justified in using violence against someone, violating the rights of another creature unnecessarily and beyond what is possible and practicable. Yeah.
So you would argue that animals are entitled to defense?
Yes, same way children are, same way retarded people are, same way just about everyone is, you know, that has rights.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that follows. I don't believe. I don't even believe people are entitled to defense from another agent. I believe they're entitled to self-defense, and I believe that they're entitled to, if someone wants to defend them, that other people have that right to defend them. But to say for animals is a different case because, like we said, animals generally can't defend themselves, and because of that, their preservation would rest on someone else. And I think the only really, as far as practical arguments go, the only practical way to assist in preserving animals would be to own them as property and to preserve them through your own defensive means.
I don't know about that. If you saw someone like kicking a dog to death in the streets, would you intervene?
Yeah,
regardless of whether that dog's their property or not. Yeah. So I think, yeah, for sure you're justified in stepping in as a third party and defending an animal.
However, that animal is entitled to that. I'm not obligated to assist that animal.
You're not obligated to. No, I wouldn't say so, because you're never obligated to put yourself at risk in that sense. I don't think you're obligated to step in on the defense of a woman who's getting the living shit beaten out of her by her boyfriend. As much as it is probably the good thing to do, I don't think you're obligated to do it. But I would say that in a decent society, animals would have the protection of people who volunteer and who work in that capacity, like police. Animals would have the rights in that sense, where you could phone the police and they'll come and kick their asses for you.
Yeah,
because that's the kind of logical extension of giving something rights in our society. The rights are a social construct that say you are entitled to be defended in that sense. Police that want to do that, you don't necessarily have to be the person to do it, but I would say that animal is entitled to defense for sure.
I get the argument, and it makes sense. And I'm sitting here still trying to rationalize how I can get the fuck around it, so I can continue eating meat. But it's I
appreciate it, man. This is a good debate. I'm sweating and everything. Like you're putting up a good fight, man. Seriously.
Okay, so if we come to the conclusion that animals have rights, then, so if animals have rights, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking to myself for a second.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
And in the meantime, I'll just check the chat for questions, just in case.
Yep. Oh, and by the way, to the people in the chat, I'm not a wigger. I saw that pop up. I'm not a fucking wigger. I'm proud to be white. All right.
Is that where the dress came from? Some people are saying I'm getting owned. Yeah, I am getting owned. I mean, they're good arguments. It's just that's why I brought him on, because he called me out and said, "Hey, if you eat meat, you should be able to justify it." And I was like, I don't know. I've never actually thought about trying to justify my eating meat. So I figured I'd give it a shot.
I seriously appreciate you coming on here and doing it, man. And it's you, of all people, are probably one of the hardest opponents that I could pick out of the kind of anti-SJW crowd.
Yeah, probably not. Sargon could probably do a better job than me.
I'd take Sargon.
So outside of the eating meat portion, would you say that as far as survival in terms of tangible, like clothing and things like that, let's say let's just go back in history for a second, prior to that of being able to utilize cotton and other things, where the only way that people knew how to properly stay warm was to take the hide of a buffalo. Would you say that is immoral?
No, that's fine.
Because it's for their survival, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because an animal would do the same to you,
What if it's for comfort?
what if it's for comfort? Then yeah, no, I couldn't justify that. Couldn't justify that because it's meeting, again, you're violating the rights of another creature for the sake of your kind of preferences and things that aren't necessary, things that aren't vital for you to survive, and you can't justify that.
Mm-hmm. And in regards to the point that you made with the with your dog, like feeding him vegan products because it's inaccessible, it's expensive, things like that. Would you say that the fact that eating meat and consuming meat products is so readily available and so easy to access, both financially and physically, in terms of like it being like a McDonald's on every fucking street corner?
Yeah.
Would you say that lends some sort of like acceptance to people who want to who maybe may find moral objections to eating meat products, but it's just so easy to find? It's
No, I don't think convenience is a great argument, because you have the capacity to move somewhere else, and you also, I mean, vegan products are so accessible these days. Yeah, if we're talking 10 years ago, I'd say, yeah, perhaps if you live in the middle of buttfuck nowhere and you can't get anything that's non-vegan, and you've only got access to some shitty petrol station or something like that, then yeah, you'd find to sort of go vegan, of course, and that will be a matter of as is possible and practicable, right? But possible and practicable doesn't mean, well, it's 5 minutes walk to McDonald's and it's a 10-minute walk to the supermarket or else to go and get some vegan food, so I'll just go to McDonald's. I think any rational person can kind of see the distinction between those. The point of going vegan is you make that, more people who do go vegan, the more people who make that effort, supply and demand, the easier it becomes for the next wave of people.
Okay.
And I should get my dog on a vegan diet, man. I honestly should.
No, don't do that. Your dog's gonna hate it. Keep the pupper healthy.
Yeah, my dog's quite fussy, to be fair. I think if we tried to move him onto that, I mean, he's old anyway. He's about a cark it, so.
And this is something else that I thought about earlier. It was a while ago. I've thought this argument that the animal industry, and granted, now I'm starting to see the immorality of what do you call it? Industrial farming or something like that.
Oh, right, yeah.
Not animal consumption, but just the industry itself. But I figured that our desire to eat animals is what allows us to have a desire to keep them alive in a way, because otherwise there's a lot of animals who outside of our desire to eat them or consume them for whether it be for nutrients or luxury products, that there's really no inherent value that we find in their existence, and that can easily lead to their extinction, because they may end up just being resorted to pests at that point.
Well, yeah, cows. Do you need to carry on?
No, you can go ahead.
No, right. Well, I mean, cows are a kind of genetic aberration anyway. They came from the aurochs, which was a wild animal that we've basically bred out of existence. We've destroyed that animal, and cows are a kind of aberration anyway. So if a few cows in the wild, who gives a fuck? But if in terms of people keeping cows alive, I've got no problem with the cow going extinct. I've got no problem with the sheep or whatever domesticated animals going extinct, as long as it's not some kind of mass genocide or something. Again, coming back to supply and demand, if people stop demanding it, over time, people will stop breeding those animals. There'll be less profit. I mean, it's barely profitable as it is. The whole industry rests on government subsidies. And even then, the farmers are all bitching and moaning about, oh, I can't make rent and all this sort of stuff. It's barely profitable as it is. So if people stop demanding the products, people would stop breeding the animals. There'd be no profit in doing it. They would eventually die out. I've got no problem with that.
Yeah, but it's like the argument. I mean, I get that you're saying, you know, if they go extinct, you know, they just go extinct, you know. But what if you have, what if you as a person have a desire to continue the life of an animal or of a species? Do you think you have a right to impose that on another species? The continuation of their existence?
That's it does it. That's not a huge moral problem for me. You know, if you want to keep a cow, and because you like cows and you want to keep their species, yeah, go for it. Go for it. I've got no problem with that. I don't know about artificial insemination, which is what they do in the, or rape, which is what they do in the dairy industry and stuff. And it is rape. The industry themselves call it rape. I don't know about that. You know, if you're fisting cows and this sort of stuff, that's nasty. But if you know, if you've got a couple cows in your field and they occasionally they pump out a new unit, then well, whatever. I don't, you know.
Okay.
Not a huge moral problem for me.
So what about this is a good point. We brought up the rape thing that brought up the argument that I hear from vegans, and I'm sure it's not all vegans, but maybe the extremes who say, you know, milking a cow is akin to raping a woman or something like that. Would you say that is also immoral? You know, something that where you're not necessarily killing an animal, but you're taking their I guess you're taking from them without killing them. And I think you can milk cows in a humane way. Would you say that consuming milk products is also equals the same exploitation of animals as killing them?
Yeah, but here's why. Because I think the vegans who talk about rape in the dairy industry, that they're not talking about milking the cows. The rape is because the cows have to be impregnated to produce milk. Right, so the farmer has to artificially inseminate them or put them in the rape racks and basically fist them and do this nasty stuff. They have to create a newborn cow or calf for the cow to produce milk. They then, once the cow is born, in order for them to take milk from that cow, they have to get rid of the calf. The calf can't be drinking that milk, and if you leave the calf there to get that milk, then there'll be no milk for you. The milk will run out once the calf's done for it and done with it, and that'll be it. So in the dairy industry, and I'm glad this came up, is that you are forcibly impregnating an animal in order to create its young, essentially. Then you're taking that young away from the cow, and this is done systematically in the dairy industry. Take the animal away from it. A lot of those calves go into veal crates. The male ones go into veal crates, and the female ones are milked. And it's essentially raping an animal to create a life form, pulling that life form out, taking it away from its mother, and then you milking the animal.
Well, I don't know. I would say that would be kind of a close to, you know, akin to like, you know, stem cells. You know, you know, create an embryo and things like that to basically exploit that life that you just created, in a sense, for the sake of your own personal gain. Would you? I don't know if I would necessarily say that's immoral.
Well, again, back to this: name the trait. If I did that to a woman, my girlfriend's pregnant at the moment.
Oh, congratulations!
If I did that to her, yeah, no.
Well, it's yours, right? And I know you're.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope so. But yeah, if I was to do that to her, if I was to take the child away and then milk her, it's not necessarily unethical. It doesn't fly, you know. It's again, you have to distinguish what is the relevant trait that makes it okay to do it to an animal and not to a human being. Okay,
and as far as eggs go,
yeah, well, the chicks in the kind of egg industry, the male chicks and stuff, when they breed new chickens for the industry, they throw them in grinders, basically, because the male ones aren't productive, so they bag them all up and chuck them in a grinder. That's pretty fucked. And the obvious problems in the egg industry with, I mean, free range chickens aren't free range. They're all brutally abused and this sort of stuff. It's just a horrific thing. And again, it comes back to this name the trait thing. With eggs, I think personally, and this is probably not very vegan of me, if you have a backyard chicken, or well, That being said, chickens actually eat their eggs. If you don't take their eggs away from them, right, they're not fertilized, they'll crack the egg open and eat it themselves. So they get nutrients back. Now, if you keep taking eggs away from the animal, they don't get those nutrients back. They essentially become deficient. They become kind of haggard. I used to think like you can take an egg from a chicken, nobody gets hurt, but it's a bit more complicated than that. I don't have huge problems with people who take the odd egg from a backyard chicken, but let's be honest, that's not what we're talking about, is it?
I'm going to go and make it. I didn't want to make this argument, but I was going to make it. It's fucking unfair. It's unfair that humans have all the fucking burden to imply ethics onto these fucking savages who eat their own eggs and shit.
Yeah. Well, they don't eat their own young. They eat their own periods, basically. It's pretty gross, but they don't eat their own young or whatever. And yeah, I hate it. I don't like the fact that I don't know.
Dogs eat their puppies and shit.
Yeah. Animals are assholes. Let's be honest. Animals are pretty horrible to each other and that, and to their family and their young and stuff. But I do find it kind of sucky that I'm ethically obligated to sort of hold myself to ethical standards. Like, it's kind of a shame that I can't enslave everybody on my street. I mean, I'm pretty good with nunchucks. But I reckon I could take the people on my street. I've got like hippies next door, and then like some old people the others. They could be my slaves. You know, it sucks, but I've got to be a decent person. You know.
Yeah.
That argument before, but it's a good one. Yeah.
I can say that I'm convinced that there is an ethical there is no ethical justification to killing animals for the sake of eating them. And Jesus Christ, I shouldn't have agreed to this debate. I should have fucking ate the Wendy's first.
Mate, one of your Twitter people warned you against it. Said, "Don't do it. Look what happened to Roman Millennial." This is just...
Yeah.
So you're gonna throw that Wendy's away then?
Probably. I'll eat the fries, but
mate, to be honest, if an animal's already had to die for it, make it your last meal.
But one more point that I wanted to bring up: the argument of preserving animals through like you're familiar with the whole hunting industry, safari hunting and things like that, where people coming to pay to murder animals allows people to protect animals from poachers and things like that on reservations, things like that. Do you think that is ethical?
Yeah, there is that kind of thing of like the way that they've brought back the rhino population is to sell them as hunting kind of victims and targets in hunting ranges and stuff like that. But again, if you grant these animals rights, do that. The only reason that it's only profitable in that sense is the fact that wild animals have no rights in that sense. So you can go out and blow their heads off and nobody has a problem, that you don't get arrested for it and stuff like this. But I think, yeah, as much as it has benefited some endangered species and stuff like this to be hunted, it's benefited them in that sense that their population has grown back. I think there are other ways. I mean, we're both capitalists. We both know that there's always another way to do something. There's always, if you get the incentives right, if you get the mechanisms, the economic mechanisms right, there's a way to do it. And I don't think you necessarily have to put these animals up as hunting targets in order to do it. I think a lot of people would put together money to protect endangered species in these scenarios.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it hasn't happened. I mean, it was the same thing with almost the near extinction of the buffalo, in that the only reason that it was able to survive is because people basically privatized them and brought them over to the farm and started to sell the meat and things like that. Yeah. Like I know you made the argument that if an animal goes extinct, that's fine, but if it goes extinct at the hands of another human, you could argue that, yeah, it's ethically wrong, But if it's ethically wrong, is there an ethical obligation for humans to prevent that through means outside of, you know, just simply abstinence, saying I'm not going to kill animals, but if other people kill animals, you know, it's whatever. They die, they die.
Yeah, I think if we did kind of implement animal rights across the board properly, then yeah, you would see a kind of there would be a police would the police, the law, the legal system or whatever would have an obligation to do something about that. And this might just be my kind of vegan extremism or whatever, but I have no problem with these kind of anti-poachers, the people who go out and hide in the bushes and blow the heads off of poachers. I've got no problem with that. I think there are certain animals out there who have almost more moral value than certain human beings. Do you think a real degenerate human being, like a serial child rapist, their life has more value than, say, a Siberian tiger?
To me, no.
Yeah, right.
And I would say there's, yeah, I guess, Jesus.
Yeah, I get it, man. There are grey lines. There are issues we need to work out. But I'm not asking you to stop poaching animals and go out hunting, because you don't do that. I'm just asking you, man, put the burgers down onto the plant products, you know?
Okay, so what's the best? Because were you always a vegan, or did you eventually become a vegan after being a meat eater?
Yeah, I was a meat eater for like 24 years, and about 3.5 years now I've been vegan.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do after this, hold on, what I'm going to do after this debate is put a bunch of decent resources that I found really valuable in the description box of, I can't, can I? I'll send you the resources. Yeah, I'll send you the resources. I'll send you a list of links and you can stick them in there. So anyone who wants to go vegan, I mean, you can spend weeks really digging into this stuff. And I guarantee you, after you've spent all that time really learning up on it, it is a pretty interesting subject. You'll want to go vegan. You won't want to kill animals and stuff like this. You want to be on our side. I would hope so, anyway. Yeah,
possibly. We'll see. We'll see how many people are convinced. And yeah. What would you say was the like? Was it easy for you to cut meat? Was it easy to go vegan?
Yeah. Once I made the connection. Once I made the connection between animals, health, environment, all of these different factors, it was kind of like I couldn't eat meat again. I couldn't eat meat. I couldn't eat dairy. It really changes your consciousness in that sense. And I know some people have gone vegan and it's kind of gone back and all this sort of stuff, but I don't think they've gone deeply enough into it. And I wouldn't know what to say about those people, you know?
So I guess to wrap up, because I got pretty fucking wrecked in this debate and getting convinced. So it was good. There was something valuable gained from it.
Yeah.
But to wrap up, and guys, you can ask some questions in the chat if you want to. If you have to take a few questions.
Yeah. Someone asked if you have to kill a pest, and that's even questionable itself. But let's say you have to kill some rabbits who are on your land and they're destroying your farm or whatever. Can you eat them after you kill them? Kind of gets a bit murky, because you might start killing them. They're a pest, so I had to kill them. Yum, 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 yum. You know, that might become your justification.
Veganism?
Yeah. No. But let's say you've had to kill some rabbits for whatever reason. Can I eat them afterwards? Well, yeah, you can. And for me, if I had to kill some pest animal or whatever, I could justify eating it because it's already dead, but I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to. And I think once you make the full connection to veganism and to the, you know, animal suffering and all this sort of stuff, and just your own health and well-being and this sort of stuff, I don't think you'd want to, man. I'd just bury the animal myself. But,
you know. Or why bury them? Leave them out, you know, so the scavengers can get them. Fucking vultures and shit.
Yeah, that's fine.
They have a right to eat animals, even though we don't.
Yeah, that's fine by me. You know, Why do you value an organism that is incapable of morality? Why do you use human ethics to value an organism that has no ounce of compassion or empathy towards you? That's my question. Well, because you have the capacity to make these choices. You have the capacity to do these things, and you, by causing unnecessary suffering to these creatures, you know, it's just a really asshole kind of thing to do. Yeah, those animals don't have to respect ethics. They don't have to respect morality and stuff like this. They don't even have to be able to conceptualize it. But, you know, I can conceptualize ethics. I can empathize with these animals. I know that they suffer. So I hold myself to a higher standard. Let's go back to that guy T's quote, shall we? You know, what society do you want to create? And it needs to be about more than just my freedom. I can do this. I'll do what I want. You need to hold yourself to higher standards.
All right. Here's a question, or maybe a statement. It looks like ethics are based on implicit contract, which I agree with. Animals cannot communicate contract, and as such, we have to infer for them. No animal product consumption seems an irrational jump from no animal murder.
I'd say that's an assertion, not an argument. I'd say, yeah, as great as that sounds, you still got to make the argument as to why that follows, you know?
Mm.
Oh, my missus is posting on the on my account here, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's writing her name at the end. So.
And would you say that universal ethics are like can there be universal ethics even if those ethics aren't reciprocated? Like,
yeah, I think this is what I'm doing is I'm arguing that those universal kind of the ethics that apply universally among humans can apply in one direction to animals. We can extend ethics to animals, but not expect it to come back. And yeah, that's about it. But the difference is that a child will grow up to have a human level of ethical understanding. Well, again, we go back to this example. What if your child is born brain damaged? What if your child is, born with hydrocephaly or anencephaly, where their brain is like blown out around their skull and stuff like this? Let's say your kid's born completely retarded. Are you still justified in killing them because they don't have the greatest future ahead of them? Or let's say your kid is born with a disease where they're going to die when they're 5 years old. Guaranteed, doctors have told you there's no way they'll survive. Are you justified in capping them when they're 3? I don't think so, you know? So
yeah, here's a common one. People are saying, why is it okay to kill plants?
Why is it okay to kill plants? Do you have an alternative? I'd like an alternative. If you can give me an alternative, like some kind of weird stem cell soup or some like astronaut pill or something.
Well, it's not about an alternative. Like, do you think it's ethically wrong? Like, even if you believe it's necessary, do you think it's ethically wrong to kill plants? Because I think plants have a desire to exist as well. Like, I mean, in a way, like they have the means of reproducing and leaving seeds so that they can continue, existing as organisms.
I think that it's not, I wouldn't say it's massively unethical, and I wouldn't say it's a problem or anything like this, but I don't go around just like beating up plants, just being an asshole to plants or anything like that. And if you want to bring the plants argument into it, like, is it ethical to eat plants? You'll kill more plants by eating animals than you would just eating a vegan diet. You have to feed the animals that you're going to eat plants, and then you eat the animals, so you're causing double the suffering. And yeah, just as a psychologist, plants don't have desires, plants don't have feelings, plants don't feel pain, they don't have the cognitive, they don't even have brains, So
yeah, here's a question I have actually. Do you think that veganism is morally superior to vegetarianism?
Yeah, because again, we go back into the dairy industry stuff. Yeah, for sure. Vegetarian is kind of like a change. It's a difference with a distinction without a difference almost. It's a change without a real change. And an interesting point is that people say like, oh, vegans think they're superior to other people. And I would say, vegans are superior to other people in regards to their treatment of animals. right? That we are morally superior to other people only in regards to our treatment of animals. I wouldn't say just across the board we're so much better than you and stuff, but in regards to our treatment of animals, yeah, I have no problem whatsoever with saying I am superior in that sense. I'm morally better in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked if abortion is immoral to vegans. I think we touched on that earlier. Are you pro life?
I struggle with the abortion thing. I think it's all based on the independent situation. You know, it's all situational. I think if you're a person who you made no effort not to get pregnant when you didn't want to be pregnant, you have God knows how many contraceptives out there and all this sort of stuff. You didn't take a morning after pill. It was fully consensual sex. All of this sort of stuff. I'm not too sure that it's too great to abort. But if you were raped and you didn't have access to a morning after pill and all this sort of stuff, then yeah, unfortunately, then you're justified in doing that. And it's a sad thing, of course, but I'm not going to lord it over you. I'm not a huge side, you know. I think situationally, we all know it's not ideal, so try to minimize it. But.
Are you familiar at all with lab meat? I see a few people asking about that. I was going to bring it up, but I'm not really familiar with like how it works or what it is.
Yeah, no, it's and I don't understand how you would make meat with nerve endings and all, like literally identical to the meat you'd get off an animal, given that meat would have nerve endings and stuff that wouldn't feel pain. But that's probably just a limitation in my thinking. I don't know about lab meat. I think if you can make meat that causes no suffering, and we know that, then fine, you know.
It's like if you could make cows who aren't sentient, would that be okay? Like if you can make brain dead cows?
If you let's say you could make a creature that has no capacity to suffer, has very little, if any, intelligence or sentience, all the significant moral factors of that animal, and it's somehow still an animal and you can still eat meat off of it, I've got no huge problem. I don't see why anyone would, other than to be a fucking ideologue, you know.
That's fair. Let's see a few more questions before we wrap up. Silly shit. Can vegans eat fetus? It has no functioning brain.
If you're really that sick.
Someone asked, I'd like to know what you plan to do now. You haven't refuted. I want to know what you plan to do now. You haven't refuted the vegan argument. You said you would go vegan for a week, but would this make you continue further? I mean, the thing is, possibly. I don't know. The argument is solid. Granted, you know, solid arguments don't always lead to rational action. So I'm pretty sure I could still find excuses, you know, that basically I don't give a fuck about ethics anymore. I just want to eat meat. But I wouldn't mind giving it a shot, and I wouldn't mind because the logic follows and the arguments and the ethics are, you know, sound. I wouldn't mind trying it out, and if I could make it work, I wouldn't have a problem with going vegan. I'm not you know, addicted to meat. It's just good.
Yeah, I think you should do your best to make it work, because here's the thing: if after this you've conceded the ethical arguments, right, and you then go back to eating animals and stuff, we never have to listen to you on ethics ever again. Right? This is the problem. Yeah. If you want to carry on talking about ethics and other people's behavior and stuff, you got to stick with the veganism now, or refute the ethical argument.
I gotta see if libertarian fascism has some loopholes to get around that. Someone said that I didn't distinguish between moral objects and moral agents. I'm assuming they're referring to animals as moral objects versus moral agents.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's sensible. But just simply playing with words like that, oh, they're moral objects, they don't have responsibilities. Again, that doesn't mean they wouldn't have rights. you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can call them an object or an agent, or I don't care. You still got to justify it.
And someone else asked, do you believe that the consumption of any organism is morally or ethically inferior if there is a tablet or pill-based alternative? Like is it inferior? Like if you could get protein from not eating crickets, would you do that, or would you be still okay to eat crickets?
If I could get protein from not eating crickets, I think I do get protein from not eating crickets.
So would you say that eating crickets is ethically inferior to getting protein from a non-sentient based source?
Yeah. It's kind of, that's basically what I've been arguing the whole time, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we can finish on this one. This is a good last question. What about painlessly killing an animal with no future perception? I've seen that point bring up a little bit about animals not having a future perception. They don't have any desire to continue their life into the future. They're just living in the now. And that maybe somehow invalidates their any ethical obligation to respect their life in any future sense.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like, what if this imaginary situation that really would never exist? And kind of secondly, it's like, again, you come back to this kind of human thing of violence towards animals desensitizes you to violence, and that is, even that it's still a kind of a thing that I consider and think it's not worth it. It's not worth the cost. It's not worth what the kind of result of doing it. It comes back to that thing of, if you can create this perfect animal that has no future concept, no sentience, no intelligence, can't suffer, which you're never going to be able to do, but let's say you can, then I don't give a fuck. But I'm talking about animals who do suffer. I'm talking about animals who do have a future concept. I'm talking about animals who are sentient and are intelligent. So let's deal with those animals first,
All right. Well, that was definitely interesting. That was an interesting discussion, man.
That was fun.
Yeah, I could say I am convinced of the argument that that there's no ethical justification to killing animals for the sake of, or unnecessarily killing animals for the sake of eating them. Not from the point of, because it's not necessary, we shouldn't do it, but from the point of the fact that if you're going to, the fact that we have the capacity to extend our ethics to them, that it's kind of like a nice thing to do. And
I would say, listen, if you really can't stick the vegan diet at all, like people have these kind of irrational attachments to certain things, and that if you really can't stick it, and I'd hope that you would do your absolute best to stick it, just think about the amount of animals you're eating. At least minimize it just as much as you possibly can, especially with dairy and stuff like that. It's just totally unnecessary, man. It's totally unnecessary.
Yeah, so someone's pointing out in the chat that after I do a vegan for a week, I'm going to come back and say I felt so weak that I needed protein. And I don't know, people use that as a cop out often, like said often.
Yeah, that happens all the time, mate. All the time. Oh, I tried it. I promise I tried it, and I just all of a sudden, all my nails fell out, my hair fell out, my head fell off, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't stick it. You haven't made the connections, you haven't done the research, you haven't looked into it well enough and planned your diet well enough. There are people out there who can help you do this. I'll put resources again in this description box. I'll send you those, and I just hope people will dig into this and really consider it and join up, sign up, convert to the cult.
Yeah, and I'll definitely link. I'll be sure to link OG's channel in the description, and also I'll probably make a follow-up videos sometime. Just if I have any further arguments that I want to put out there that maybe like, oh, I didn't think about this. Hell yeah, media. it's justifiable. I'll throw it out there. If you can refute that one, then I'll be back where you were.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, you'll have an argument that'll pop up that you didn't bring up in this. But yeah, that'd be good, man.
Yeah, man. All right, bro. Thanks again for chatting up with me, and I'm sure we'll be having more of these discussions in the future. And guys, I appreciate you for watching. Again, I'll link to all the relevant information in the description of this live stream. I think that's about it. Take it easy.
Cheers, man.
Later.
Nice one.